Hockey?
Didn't
No,
the English
no.
play something?
I
And
would
it was
say
played.
polo.
It was played by It was played by Native Americans.
Okay.
Oh, is it polo or
No, no,
okay?
it's lacrosse.
Wow.
Lacrosse.
Okay. Yeah.
And it was played on foot originally, not on horseback. Although eventually they ended up getting played on horseback. The Native Americans played it on horseback. It was played out in the woods, and it was played with a ball and with a device that would catch the ball, and the ball would be thrown with that device, and it ended up looking a lot like what a lacrosse setup would be today. Lacrosse has never caught on worldwide like cricket did, and and there's a lot, and it's considered, other than, I mean, more than hockey, it's considered the Canadians' national game, lacrosse. It was first, determined that it was played by Native Americans in Eastern Canada. So anyway, it's a little sports history. Let's switch a little bit back to what Hugh's been up to, and I'm going to back even up and ask Mark or Hugh, because they'll remember it better than I will, and maybe Reeb will. When was the sessions, the series that we did with Hugh? Mark, do you know the dates
Late
approximately?
2016.
Late 2016. That's what I thought. It was in the first year. EAT had its first formal session June 6th, 2016. We will have our 10th anniversary on this coming June and 26th. So with Hugh coming on in that time frame, and Mark's going to share his screen there, guys, so it's not like we're going away. He's going to share and show some things. Hugh would have been very early on. So anyway, and so let's go back to that time, Hugh, and give us an update on what you've done in your life, personally and business wise, from that time, almost 10 years ago, 9 years ago, to now.
Thanks for having me back, Wayne. Hello, everyone. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey, because I thought there was an opportunity for this kind of business planning for farmers, because I felt I'd lacked it when I was doing farming, and it just never really developed. But what did happen was that I found myself on a totally different journey. So I started, in fact, I met Leslie Laws
Yes.
on one of the sessions, and she contacted me, and we did a business plan for a project idea she had in Catalonia, Spain. And that's how I started a journey into preparing projects for funding. When I say preparing projects for funding, my particular skill at that time was developing financial models. And then moving on from that, I actually went into sourcing funding, arranging funding, and so it's been a long journey, 9 years, and it's been an interesting journey. And kind of tonight, tonight for me, because it's 10 p.m. for me. So I just want to go through some of the things that I've picked up and learned about financing projects, admittedly slightly bigger than I think most of us who are interested in EAT are going to be involved with. But the key thing that's come up for me is whether it's a $25 million project or a $3 or $4 billion project, The steps are the same. The documentation is the same. We don't, there's nothing really different. And I think that if I've learned anything, was how little I knew when I started about what funders require to consider a project. And the bitter lesson I've learned is that if you don't follow, so every funder has different requirements. And if you deviate from their requirements, they don't even look at your application. So fully 80 to 90% of project funding applications go straight in the bin. That's the first thing. The second thing is it's time consuming. Not that you, as I say, not that most of us are going to be in this market, but I'm busy doing closing a funding round for guys who I spoke to last Monday, and he opened the meeting with, Hugh, it's 20 years since I started this journey. They have raised some money, but to get it into commercial production, it's actually a different type of wind turbine, a vertical wind turbine rather than the horizontal wind turbine. But he told me, I think it was the 17th of October. No, not the 17th, about the 14th of October. It was 20 years since he'd started on the journey to get this turbine into the market. We're nearly there. I think he'll be funded before it gets to 21 years. But it's a long cycle to get this stuff done. And most particularly, not the longest part. The longest part is finding a funder with a sympathetic funder, and then working to get the pack in the format the funder wants, which is what I've been doing now for post-pandemic, if I can put it like that. Yeah. So that's where I am. And
affect you personally and business-wise?
Sorry, it's been a side gig for most of that time. And at one stage I was doing it freelance, and then eventually I went to work for someone as an intern to try and get a view from the inside. And that helped me tremendously. It was frustrating because I never closed a deal in the 2 years I was there. But in the whatever we are 10 months since I left them, I now have 4 under my belt. So, I obviously picked up some skills there.
It's doing the wind turbine, and the 20 years in, let's just say it is 2021, there's not a whole lot of difference there. How has he protected his IP during all that time, his intellectual property? Because
no, I mean, a lot of that time was actually in the technical side, not necessarily in the funding side. It was patenting, it was getting approvals, getting licenses, getting protection for it.
okay.
Yeah, so it's taken and because it is a highly technical thing, what's under the skin, no one can see. There is only one at the moment out there that someone could try and copy, but I think they have a better chance of copying it out of the patent rather than from the piece of equipment itself.
As he finishes and gets this funding, just broadly, what will the next steps be?
So the first funding is to start production, because they have some orders and they're going to make them by hand. The bulk of the first funding, though, is to build convert an existing building to a robotic assembly line. But they have to build the robots first.
How has, and I'm going to broadly use the term AI, affected your side of this process, the funding process, the planning side in the last 2 years, let's say?
Interestingly, it's one of the topics I want to bring up tonight, is how I'm finding AI helping fairly superficially at this stage, because I'm not into subscription AI and, really delving into it. But I will give you examples tonight of what I've done. And it's very cool. And it makes, it turns 3 or 4 weeks work into less than half an hour.
Yeah.
Is it correct every time? No. But at least now you're just checking what it said. You don't have to write screeds and screeds and still find it was wrong.
How long does it take to do the corrections?
Oh, another hour maybe, because if you've written it, so what and as I say, that you're stealing my thunder now because it's part of the presentation. So it's
Then let's let
yeah.
you do it in the order that you were going to.
So the beauty of it is it does iterations, and it comes back with suggestions that you probably haven't even thought about. And I'll show you what it is. So yeah, anything else? If you'd like me to start, I'm happy to start.
No, let's go ahead. Let's get started. So
Okay.
do you have something you want to share? And if so, can you do it, or do you want Mark to do it? You tell us.
I can do it. I'm just going to just pull up. There are only 9 slides, but they're all really aids memoir for me, as opposed to rather slides and slides of reading. So what I want to talk to you about tonight is the importance of cash flow. You see, I've titled it "Yield is fine, but cash flow is final." And if I can fill you in my younger days, early teens, shall we say, I read hundreds of Westerns. That was my thing. Louis L'Amour, J.T. Edson, and sundry other people. And this is not quite a line from a book, but the line from the book was about the quick draws, a gunfight, a gunfight and quick draw. And the book was "Speed is fine, but accuracy is final." And I've just adapted this, and it'll be used going forward. It's all very well to get a great yield, but if you ain't making money out of it, it's not worth it to you. You won't be sustainable. Anyway, let's move on. So I think I may not be it. There we go. So what I'm going to do tonight is I've just started looking at a property, 17-acre property, about 15 acres is farmed. I don't want to farm it per se. I've discovered if I've learned anything in all the years I've been alive, I'm a lousy farmer. I'm in love with farming, but I'm a lousy farmer. So someone else is going to do the work for me. But I found this property. I'm actually interested in the house, but it has some quite nice land on it. And I was looking at what I could do with the rest of the land to make it profitable. And I want to go through my thought process all the way as we go through the thought process, so that you can see where I'm thinking. And then I'll show you, as part of this, where your question about AI has been made such a difference to me. So I am in South Africa, and for those of you who are in the Northern Hemisphere, you will notice the shadows here. For us, the sun is in the north, so the shadows point to the south. Just opposite to you. I still get confused in the north because the sun is on the wrong side for me. Here, I have no problem telling you where north and south are, but anyway. So we're looking at Croft Farm. It's 17 acres, about 15 acres of farmland, and we're going to do a 5-year pasture and cropping cycle. 1 year cropping, 4 years pasture. The key thing in planning these things is actually the reverse engineering. You must plan for your profit before you decide what you're going to do and what costs you're going to incur. So just as there is holistic management, part of holistic management is using holistic financial management, which differs from, if I can say, differs from traditional agricultural economics and the beloved gross margin analysis by looking at the whole enterprise and not the whole farm or farm business, and not distinguish between each enterprise, because that becomes difficult. And I'm just thinking of a thing. If I'm producing milk, and I have waste milk or some milk goes off, if I have either pigs or poultry, I can feed that to them and they'll love it. And it's free feed for them. So you make your money in many places rather than making your money from one enterprise or, the odd smaller. Typically today, our farms run on one primary enterprise and, a sideline for other income sometimes. But so holistic I apply holistic financial management to my planning, and I look at what I can do on this whole property and how I can combine a whole lot of things to get to the numbers I'm looking for. Okay, before we go there, which are my rules of thumb at the bottom, the next one is a money multiplier. And I want to talk to you about the ability to multiply money. And the simplest way is to tell you a story. Let's assume that I sell $100 of meat to a local hotel, preferably somebody outside my area. You'll see why. But somebody outside buys a product from me for $100. I can then take that $100 and pay my bookkeeper for work done. They can then take that $100 and pay a restaurant for a Christmas dinner or a customer function. The hotel can go and pay for the rental of stuff for a wedding venue. So, and that could all the way come right around back to me getting my $100 back. And I could make this a story, as long as I like. But typically, money spent in your local network will turn over 8 times before it starts losing its value. Going to a grocery store to buy your groceries, 80% of your money leaves the community as you transact. So this money multiplier is a great thing for building community and nurturing each other in this thing. I don't think that we should consider as small farmers going it alone. We need to collaborate. I'm not saying partner, but collaborate. So moving on to the rules of thumb. What I've done with crop farmers, I started and I said, right, the farm is going to cost me about $300. Now, as an investor, I want to get a return on that $300,000, and I have said typically project funders look for between 8 and 12%. So magic number, I've settled on 10%. So I want to get $30,000 a year back as a return on my investment, not a return on my labor. So I have this rule of thumb that says 1/3 of the of your revenue is reserved for production. 1/3 is reserved for people, and 1/3 is reserved for profits, which is what the owner earns getting their money back. Okay, but typically, like everyone else, I don't have access to all the money, so I'm going to have to borrow the money. So that 1/3 for the owner's return, I split into two. I allow half the owner's return to come to the owner, and half of that profit to go for settling debt, servicing any debt I might have to invoke to get this project going. So 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but the last third is divided into two. I have got, for some reason it's not showing up now. Where is it? There we go. So if we do this, we can see easily where the problem is. Okay, so if we look at the rule of three, on the left, I've got a traditional cash flow statement, which shows you your revenue, cost of sale, a gross margin, because that's what we do in agricultural economics, have done for 50 years, gross margin analysis. Then we have overheads and split up the cash flow below that. So our problem comes in that unless an expense item is allocatable directly to an enterprise, it gets disregarded in gross margin analysis. So if you look at my numbers here, 40% gross margin sounds reasonable. When you look at big companies, they're making somewhere between 10 and 19% typically. So 40% sounds good, but it's all chewed up by the overheads. And you end up with nothing, with actually losing money. That's a minus 10,000 for our net cash flow. Okay, if we move that into what I've called a holistic cash flow statement, into my rule of three, I've got production, team, which are staff costs, and then what is known in financing as free cash flow. That is cash flow that is not required to run your business. It's to service the owners, the debt, the banks that effectively own you, or the shareholders, the investors, all of that. That's what free cash flow is. So if I've just organized the middle one, reorganized the one on the left to be the middle one. And you can see that 80% of our costs are paid off the farm. Remember my multiplier. So the minute I pay it off the farm, I'm kind of losing value, especially seed, fertilizer, poisons, insurance. None of those are typically community things. Those are all big conglomerates selling you stuff. So all that money is lost to you. And you're spending this whole period, whatever period we're measuring here, working for third parties who don't care whether you survive or not. Staff costs are relatively small, and we've still got this negative cash flow. If we move over to my right-hand one, which I've called the Regen Ag cash flow statement. So now I am dumping seed. I'm adjusting seed. I'm dumping fertilizer and poisons. And you can see that I've gone into the thirds. 1/3 for what I've called third-party payments or production, 1/3 to the team, and suddenly I have a positive cash flow, and I've managed to service my owners with a free cash flow of 34%. And typically, as I said to you there, I allow half that, 17%, to go to debt servicing, and 17% as a return of profit to the owners. I hope that helps, because for my $300,000 farm, I want to make myself a net cash flow bottom line of $30,000 a year. By reverse engineering this, I can get that I need to, if I multiply that by 9, I need to turn over $2.7 million a year. And that number of what my target, my goal for turnover is, my goal for revenues for the coming year helps me set my first goal for the business. I now have a goal. I want to generate revenue of 2.7 million for the year. Now I go on to the next step, which is then saying, so I have preferences, I have biases like every human. I have biases of the things I want to do. But I know now that the things that all I want personally from the farm, apart from a return on money, is, let me just divert back a bit. Staff costs must always include a return for your labor. So if you don't work on the farm and you just have an investment, you just get an investment return. But if you are a member of staff as well, your salary must be included in staff costs. There's an old adage that for small businesses, pay yourself first. So you must get there and be acknowledged as a contributor to the staff or to the team, as well as an owner. There are two sources of revenue, and that's also nice, because they should say you should have 5 or 6 different revenue streams to be comfortable and build a little bit of sustainability into your model. Okay, so we go forward and we say, right, okay, so what can we do? Can I do for in order to generate this $2.7 million? Now, my biases are, I only want the farm for milk, fresh vegetables, meat of all types. So I kind of have picked my enterprises. All I have to do is scale them, remembering that my target is now $2.7 million. So for me, the high value product is poultry, pastured poultry. It's high value, high numbers, big turnover, and I can get to about $2 million a year on this property on poultry. And at this stage, I'm not looking at value added stuff. I'm just looking at selling poultry freshly processed on I'm not doing further processing, making meals or anything like that. I'll get to that in a second. The next thing I'm going to do, as I said to you, so now I can say, well, I've got cattle. I want cattle that will give me both meat and milk. I've got, they're going to give me, what will they give me? 400 or 500, sorry. My multiplication was bad there. My turnover needs to be 230,000, not 2.3 million. But let's forget about that little error on my part. I need to, and I want vegetables. That's also high value, and it's only on 25% of my farmland that we are going to do market gardening and some cropping, but not commodity cropping. We're going to be looking at a very much a permaculture type enterprise and a permaculture design on the property to get us into food forests and that kind of thing. So there we go. My enterprises now just have to be sized to get me to my target. And if I can keep my costs, so if you're not making those numbers, if your production costs for the farm are more than a third of your revenue, you need to look at what you're doing. Go regen, because you can cut out your fertilizer and poisons immediately, or 90% of them in year one. So it's an easy win to get your production costs down. I find with the original traditional cash flow statement, it's very difficult to work out where the problem is because you have no goal for what your cost of sales will be, what your gross margin needs to be, because actually neither of those take any consideration of what the overheads and debt servicing of your business are. Okay, so after I've done this, and we'll come on to the AI now. So the next step is to build myself a business model. So what I've decided I'm going to do here is I'm going to build a business incubator. So we're going to have interns come onto the farm for 12 months. In South Africa, it's normally a requirement, a degree, a university or college requirement that they serve at least 1 year internship before they can graduate. So we're going to bring people on. The plan is 12 people a year, 6 people every 6 months as interns to run this business for us. But I need to build a business model canvas. Okay, and a business model canvas just is a summary, a point form of what you're going to do in your business. And we need to fill out these 9 things. Okay, and I'll be honest with you, before the advent of AI, I had never got to the point where I completed one. But hey, Shoel, I put a few things like I've got 15 acres. This is what I want to do. I want cattle, sheep. I want only 1/5 of the land to be in cropping. The rest will be in livestock enterprises, and roll on. And after a few iterations, AI produced this business model canvas for me. So we've gone from those 9 headlines to this, who the key partners are, what the key activities on the farm are. For example, I did tell it I wanted on-farm processing of the stuff. what our key resources will be required are, what the value proposition is. In other words, what am I going to tell how am I going to attract the interns to my farm as opposed to any other farm to get them working with me and to get the value of their inputs. Who our customers are, what channels we're going to use to get to our customers, how we're going to build customer relationship, and what our revenue streams are. And then there's a cost structure. And if we go to the AI process, I should actually have given you the picture. So this was iterative. I probably did 4 or 5 things. So I put in a prompt. I call it a prompt. So I put in a prompt and I got something and I read through it and I said, well, okay, so they haven't covered that and they haven't covered that. But it also prompted me and came back and said, I didn't have to tell it what needed to be in a business model canvas. It has a model somewhere in its brain. So it came back and said, look, you haven't covered this. How are you going to cover this? And so it was iterative, additive. So I added more stuff and it came back and it came back and it came back. And in fact, I haven't showed it in this presentation, but I also got a strategic plan, a 1-year strategic plan on a month-by-month basis out of this. I could get it to do my financial model, but for me, because financial modeling is what I do, it was more work for me to give it, all the right numbers to the AI engine than it was just to stick it into my spreadsheet. Because it takes me about 3 hours to develop a full model for a project of any value because I have the template available. So it's absolutely incredible how much this has helped me. And it's going to be a great help for anyone doing things like business plans to support funding applications in whichever form, equity, grants, loans, whatever form. These can all be got. Okay, I'm using Microsoft Copilot Chat and Chat GPT-5, but there are so many engines out there and only the free version, by the way, that you're not restricted to that. And it's my new best friend. It's as simple as that. If I want anything that requires collation, I go to the AI. If I just want to find the origin of cricket, I will just Google it, as always. But if I really want, how can I start? In fact, this is how I started. How I started this whole process was I went to ChatGPT and said, I'm thinking of setting up a farm business incubator. What do you think? Is this a sustainable business idea? And it came out, and then it wanted to know where it was and what we were going to do. And as I say, it's iterative and additive, but certainly less than an hour, I had this business model canvas out. So the cost structure is really headlining what we have, what we need to think about. And that's part of my document pack, which is my next slide. Yeah. Sorry, we in Word. Let's go out of here and go back to a slideshow. Right. Okay. So what do we need for funding applications? And by this, I mean anything. If you go to your bank, if you arrive at your bank and say, I need to borrow $10,000, they're going to ask you a lot of questions, and you start at a disadvantage. If you go to a bank and say, boom, I have a pack for you. Here we are. This is what I want. This is how I want to repay you. This is, I want a loan. I want equity. I want however you're going to do it. So you need a project summary, which is really the business model canvas that I've just shown you. That's a project summary. We need pro forma income statement, cash flow forecast, and pro forma balance sheet. Absolutely essential. Good news, you can download templates, and if anyone wants one, I have the one that I have honed over 6 years that I'm quite chuffed with, and I can do it now. A $1 billion project model over 20 years in 3 hours. Those things people are comfortable with. The source and uses of funds is, what am I going to use the money I'm borrowing or looking for? How am I going to use it? I won't show you exactly how it's done. So I must match. So the one big surprise I learned very early on in project finance, and it's a function of value. In project finance, you will never get all your money in one lump sum at the beginning. It doesn't work like that. So part of what you've got to do is tell them how you plan to use these funds, because that allows them to draft what they call a drawdown schedule. So drawdown schedules are typically, so if we look at the practicalities of a project, projects very seldom hit peak speed on day one. So typically in our projects, we allow 3 months to get up to speed. Establishment, getting the last permits, because when we get projects for funding, the project developers have always, without fail, run out of money. So they need to get the last permitting done. They need to get the environmental impact assessment done. All of those things have to be paid for. So we kind of ramp up our cash requirements, our funding requirements by the project, because they all arrive. We'd like $100 million next Wednesday, please. So you have to explain, first of all, that this doesn't work like this. This is not your local branch of your bank, and you're not going for a mortgage. Okay, this is something that is built and built. So if it's going to take you 2 years to build your project, whatever it is that you're developing, they're probably going to say you can have the money over 18 months. They won't wait for all 2 years, but they will throttle your money. And typically I work on 20% in the first month, and then 11 months of 7% to get to my 100% funding. That's just an easy way, because the people I'm currently working with, the funders I'm currently working with, want to deliver their money over 12 months. Okay, so let's just go through what some of these documents look like. This is the executive summary headings from my BSG projects summary. I haven't filled in all the wording, but those are just, and this was written by AI, checked by me. So it's all the points I made in my summary. In fact, in the full. So they always say that the executive summary of a business plan is the last thing you write. So you write down everything you want to do, and then you give that document to your AI engine, and it will summarize it for you, and it's very nice. Again, this was less than 5 minutes to get this out. But obviously, I've done quite a lot of work putting all of those things together. It did add a few. The design, I can't remember, measuring impact and training programs, it added. So next thing, these are the financial documents you need to supply. So you need an income statement. That's what my income statement looks like on my project template. I need a balance sheet. They will be what they are. It depends. And a cash flow forecast. And then the sources of use of funds. So you can see what I've got in sources of uses. A lot of people are, I wouldn't say comfortable, but are familiar with the first three. And the sources and uses of funds is I've come to you for X million. What am I going to use it for and when? So this is all time-based. So what land am I buying and when am I paying for it? What building am I doing? When am I paying for it? What development, other development, plant and equipment, working capital and financing costs are all how I'm going to use your money, Mr. Funder. At the bottom, there is a list of funding sources that you're likely to be using. In projects for us, most of our project funders want some equity in the project because these are 20 to 25-year projects. They also do long-term loans. In the case of my funder, they're doing 20-year loans. You might need short-term funding for something. And there we find, particularly in real estate projects, they always want a lot of money at the beginning to buy the land. And it's always an urgent thing. If I don't have it by 2 weeks on Wednesday, I'm going to lose the right to the land. But we have discovered that is normally self-induced or self-created emergency, with most not funders, most people who are selling land to a developer are flexible if you talk to them. So there we go. So just before I finished, there was some stuff I was thinking about earlier, and one of the things that I advocate is that if you're doing a project like Croft Farm, I'm buying a piece of land and I'm going to have a business on it. Keep those two separate. Okay, the reason for that is your land purchase is normally your biggest single purchase. It is yours. You don't want to dump it in if at some stage you change the nature of your enterprise. For example, you start giving your employees a share of the business. You need to give them a share of the business, not of the property. The property is a separate item. So keep them, and from my American friends, they have coined a term for real estate deals of propco and opco. So property owning company and operating company. And I think that is particularly the most diverse one I've ever come across was it had the property in one, the real estate in one company or one entity. It had the equipment in another entity. It had the livestock in another entity, and then it had an agricultural operations entity. And that was one family on one farm. This man came out of some very smart thing, because it's protection. Your land doesn't move. It's never going to lose value. They're not making it anymore. So if your operational enterprises fails, you're not putting your land at risk. You will still walk out with the major asset that you invested in. So that is just one piece of advice, and I apologize for the fact that it's not in the slideshow. As I said, the slideshow was more as a guideline for me to waffle on with. Thank you for this. I will make, if anyone wants the financial model template, I'm happy to share it. It is, I think it came from the United Nations or the Food and Agricultural Organization. I have no idea, but there are no copyrights on it or anything. So, and I have submitted, but those 4 documents that I gave you, all of those come off one spreadsheet. Yeah, so it makes your life, yeah, it sounds like a long way, but when I put in what I'm going to be saying, how I'm going to earn my revenue on my assumptions page, that feeds through to the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash forecast, and the sources and uses of funds automatically. So don't break the links, folks. There are some very complicated formulae in there. So I have this in Excel. I'm happy to share it with you. I used to have, I'll have a look. I might even have an instruction manual on how to complete it. That one definitely came from the United Nations. So thank you so much. I hope you have gleaned something from this, and I'm sorry if I waffle on. It is my passion, and I think that, oh, the other thing I need to talk to you about before we close up, well, before we go to the floor. On average, I don't know, a little while ago, on average, farmers get 14% of the consumer dollar spent. So only 14 cents of the consumer dollar spent. And to show you what I mean, Kellogg's cornflakes. So the corn price I see at the moment is $200 a ton today. I checked, which is $200 a ton, 20 cents a kilogram. So what's that? Halve it again, 10 cents a pound in round figures. $5 a bushel. Yeah, 10 cents a pound. That's what the farmer gets for their corn. If you go to your grocery shop, you will get Kellogg's cornflakes for, oh, now I've got to do it, 72, so 30, 24. That was $2.40. So $2.40 a pound. No, sorry, not $2.40 a pound, $1 a pound. So you're paying $1 a pound to get your corn back that you sold for 10 cents a pound. Not a, so we have to, as agriculturalists, and particularly smaller agriculturalists, close that gap for us. We can reduce costs, but there's a finite amount that you can reduce costs by. The big value for us as farmers is to end up dealing directly with the consumer. And I keep saying to farmers, big factory farmers, industrial farmers, they all say they feed the world. And I go, nonsense. You do not feed the world, because no one buys corn from you. No one buys wheat from you. No one buys cattle, sheep, goats, chickens, whatever from you. There's always a middleman that buys it from you. You are not feeding the world. Someone is transforming what you sell into something that the consumer wants on their plate for food. We have to be those people. We have to cut out all of those people where we can. And that's where I believe the collaboration can be a huge thing. I know in the States and in the UK, small meat processing plants are almost non-existent. I mean, I read about people who travel in the States 200 miles to get to a processing plant and then 200 miles back. And I'm going that, this should be a communal thing where we have part ownership, timeshare, if you will, of the use of that entity. Because we can't all afford to have one each. But what we can do is 10 of us can share it, something like that. Okay, those are my last 10 cents worth, except to answer your questions. So I'm happy to take any comments, questions, criticisms from you. Go light on the criticism.
You want to just put it back to where we'll take the screen away for a second. Hugh, that was awesome, as I knew it would be, and as your series you did with us before, where I see several questions coming up from the audience, so I'm going to just get to some of those here. And thank you so much, and we're close to the top of the hour, so we'll just do a few questions. If you could, Mark will probably ask you after this, or Reed will, about getting these three, this one that's up on the screen right now, as well as the 2 or 3 others. That'd be awesome if we could get those.
It's no problem at all.
Yeah, because I don't think a lot of our people have probably seen it. Anyway, anybody throw your questions up. I'm going to pull back to ones that I've got here. Let's see. With robots and AI, how will they influence the future human workforce employability? That's a concern people have. Are they going to take over for the workforce? So let's stay a farmer. Let's just go in farming. What is AI something a farmer should be afraid of?
Personally, I think we should embrace it. There are so many things that AI can do for us. It's a tool. Can it go the other way? Of course it can. But if you use a tool properly in anyone's hands, a tool must add value to your life. Otherwise, you shouldn't be using it. But as I say, I've found that I'm using it more and more. I'm not saying I've identified perfect use cases yet, but I am enjoying the flexibility that it gives me and the fact that it actually prompts me back with questions and suggestions and reports and all sorts of stuff. And this is all free stuff. Okay, so just to put you clear, Microsoft Copilot Chat is the free version of Microsoft AI built on ChatGPT, but it's got its other tools in it, and ChatGPT 5 is the latest version that's on trial, but free. That's all free. But what that does is it does not look at your computer. You can give it information from your computer. When you prompt it to do something, you're allowed to attach documents for it to look at. but it only reads those documents and then dumps the data at the end of it. The rest of the stuff it does, it goes out into the public World Wide Web to go and search for information. And I have found over the years that I'm not very good at prompting Google. I'm loving the fact that I can, on a much smaller scale, go to get much better information out of the stuff. Sorry. So Alicia, farm cooperatives, I think.
Let's just deal with that one as our last question. What are your thoughts on cooperatives, and how much are they used?
Cooperatives can work. My experience of them in Southern Africa is they get a life of their own. And the minute you have to hire a professional manager to run the co-op for you, the agenda changes because they now have an agenda. So we've had a number of our cooperatives morph from cooperatives into listed companies. And the farmer members who owned the co-op and only had an investment of a few $1,000s in it, they don't make any money out of that. But somehow the managers that put the deal together made millions. And it's like, so I'm saying when you get to a certain size in a co-op, you end up employing someone who has a different agenda. They're now out to enrich themselves. Whereas when it's a farmer-owned cooperative, you have limited scope to play because you've got 10 or 50 or 100 independently minded business owners. Whereas the agenda changes when it's the man with his MBA and he decides, no, well, we can do this and we can do this. And then in a reasonably short time, you've gone from a co-op where you were an owner to a supplier where you have no input anymore. So that's why I try to emphasize not cooperation, but rather collaboration. Because to me, collaboration is a small co-op. It's still a co-op. You're cooperating, but it's on a different, under different rules, shall I say.
This was awesome, and we are a little bit past the hour, so we'll kind of finish it up. But I want to do this. Let's not let it be 9 more years before we do something together again. And
there were a couple in there, but yeah.
I do well. And Leslie, I was so cool that you were able to get involved with somebody from EAT early on. But everybody, let's see if we can maybe bring some projects to you and for BSG to be working on, and it'll use that expertise to where it can be in the next 4 or so that he works on, and maybe you and I talk privately after this and another time, and tell me a little bit more about those 4. It was cool hearing about the wind turbine, but I'm sure those other 4 also are very interesting stories. So you probably could say at least a little bit about some of them without really giving something.
Okay, yes. Yes, so we've got the wind turbine, we've got a real estate development on an island in the Bahamas, we've got a resort development in Panama, and I've got an oil recycling plant in Dubai.
Okay, cool. See, there we go. So there's what those 4 are. Well, hey, Hugh, thank you so much. Mark, thanks for all
everyone.
Thanks,
Wayne. Thanks, Mark.
Thank you for your questions.